Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the ADA CLA Keeping Our Rivers Flowing Summit. If I may now hand over to ADA's chair, Robert Caldwell, I think we can begin. Robert.
Thank you, Ian, for that introduction, and welcome to everybody to Keeping Our Rivers Flowing Summit, which, as you'll see, is hosted by ADA jointly with the CLA. And I will be chairing duties with Judicel Hammond, who is Director of Policy and Advice for the CLA, and Judicel will be joining us later in the Q&A part of the agenda and taking over chairing duties then. I'm really delighted about the fact that we've got so many people joining this summit. I think as of this morning, we've 266 registered, which shows the depth of interest and passion about this issue. And it is something that we've been looking to try and progress a summit of this kind for quite a while now. And that's something that I'm really pleased that we've been able to do this. Of course, it would have been really nice if we could have done this in person, but I think the depth and the speakers that we have today and the presenters that we've got shows that we've really got quite a wide range of issues. Please, I really want everybody to take part in this and to be asking questions. As has been set out in the slide, it is really important that you ask questions via the meeting chat function in Teams. We will, between myself and Judicel, we will be choosing the most popular questions. If you like a question, use the thumbs up option to try and like that. That will push it further up the list so that we can choose the most popular questions from that. But I really do ask you to keep those short and to the point. It is really important that we can actually make sure, because we've got to read those questions out. If they're lengthy questions, they're unlikely to be taken. So I'm afraid it's a bit of a three-line whip. So anything longer than 3 lines is very unlikely to be read out. So short and to the point, and you're more likely to get to the taken. Any of those that we can't take, we will be recording the session, as Ian has indicated, and we will be really making sure that that is something that we can take forward those questions we haven't been able to deal with today, because I am anticipating that there'll be a lot of issues, and we do anticipate that this will be a start of a conversation that we can really take forward for all people involved and really widen this with all stakeholders. And I'm really so pleased that we've got such a wide range of stakeholders involved today. I think the issues that we're talking about today really was set out in the strategy, the flood and coastal erosion risk strategy. I think set out what we need to do in terms of taking forward and the challenges of climate change. And the Climate Change Committee has set out very recently, actually, that as a country, we need to do more to step up to the mark in terms of resilience. And I think all of us on this call are already seeing the effects of climate change and how that's going to impact on our rivers and our communities. And this isn't an urban versus rural debate. This is about all communities, because we strongly believe that catchments need to be managed as a whole and not on parts of those. And so let's protect urban areas and ignore urban areas, rural areas of catchments, because we feel that actually you need to manage catchments as a whole. And our experience is where that is the case, you do get better outcomes for all. A bit of housekeeping in terms of I've set out how you do the questions and how we do that. We are going to have to keep to time. There will be an opportunity for questions for our first two speakers after their presentation. Timing will be the fact that I am only going to be able to take probably a couple of questions, but as soon as the first speaker starts speaking, the chat function will be open. So please get ready with those questions and get typing those in. And I'm really delighted that our first two speakers are right at the top of policy and strategy on this issue. So we're really pleased that we've got Georgina Collins, who's DEFRA's Director of Flood and Water, and Carolyn Douglas from the Environment Agency, who is the Executive Director for Flood and Coastal Erosion Risk Management. I think that you couldn't have two better people for kicking off this summit and to be really at the top of the decisions that are made about where we go forward. And I'll be asking Caroline to speak first, and then there'll be an opportunity for a couple of questions to Caroline, if there's time allowing, and then Georgina will follow. So I would hope that as soon as I've finished speaking, we'll open the chat, and you can really start to get those questions in. I know there's a lot of passion about this subject, but please keep them short. So I'm going to ask Caroline to start her presentation, share her screen, and let's make sure that this is a really a good debate and a positive debate about going forward, working together. Caroline.
Thanks so much, Robert, and hopefully you can see the presentation now on your screens. You've set it up really nicely, and I think what you have said really clearly around our climate is changing at a faster rate and at a scale that we've never seen before. And sadly, it means it seems like this on the screen are going to become an increasing occurrence. So I think it's really important as a water management sector, we need to be able to prepare for and respond to more frequent flooding events. And at the same time, we need to be able to anticipate and adapt our working practices to becoming more flood resilient, as you pointed out. And we can only do that by working together and achieving more at the catchment level to support farmers, landowners, and the wider community. So I'm Carolyn Douglas. I'm Executive Director for Flood and Coastal Risk Management for the Environment Agency. I am really new to the post, having been here less than 3 months, and I'm really excited to be able to talk to you today for the time I'm with you, and to also to be able to get out on the ground once we can, to be able to see some of the exciting work and get to know things better. My previous roles have been in incident management in the agency, so I have a long background in incident response as well here and in Australia. If you haven't, you've probably been already to be able to pick the accent by now. So I think what we've seen in terms of climate, and we've had record-breaking events over the last few years. Most recently, storms Kiara and Dennis last year, and Desmond, Eva, and Frank in 2015-16, and all of those events, as well as last February was the wettest February on record. October last year, on the 3rd of October, we saw enough rainfall to fill Loch Ness. So we are breaking records all over the place for river levels and rainfall levels, and all of that is can be attributed to climate change. So that we need to be able to address those impacts and understand what that means. And it also, it's not, as Robert pointed out, it's not just urban areas that have these impacts, it's rural areas as well. As we know, from Shropshire through to Nottinghamshire, we saw impacts from those particular events and how they were impacted in terms of inundation. And I know that ADA members up and down the country responded to those events, and in Lincolnshire and Humber and the ooze IDBs in particular to protect land and communities, and that collaboration is really important. So most recently, we had the floods at the ooze washes on Christmas last year, and that catchment scale flood is one that we haven't seen since Easter 1998. And so I think you all know, or many of you would know, that the ooze washes is the largest washland in the UK, and it's essential for the conveyance of water from the Great Ooze to the wash. And the assets that are included in the ooze washes are raised defences and pumping stations, and they all worked incredibly well, but they were really heavily tested. And in places, those contingency plans that we put in place had continued to see levels rise further, and that did put people, property, farmland and infrastructure at risk. And it's those sorts of situations that we need to be able to prepare for and work together on in the future to work out how we can build the resilience and adapt to those situations. We are going to see the scale of flooding that we saw in 2019 and 2020 happen again and happen more often. And we know we can't protect everywhere. So it is about resilience and adaptation and building that in going forward. It's not only more flooding that we're going to see. We also know one of the challenges we're going to face is more prolonged spells of dry weather and drought, and that will bring increased pressure on biodiversity and habitats. Alongside that, we have aging infrastructure, such as pumping stations that were built more than 100 years ago. We've dealt with the COVID crisis incredibly well, and we are still going through it, but we've learnt some amazing lessons and been able to deliver on the ground really well through those lessons. We're also facing a skills shortage, so we need to be able to encourage more young people into the profession and make sure that climate change is addressed through learning, innovation, and what those young minds can bring to us. And achieving net zero is also really key. We know we're locked in with the Paris Agreement to a 1.5 degree temperature rise going forward and seeing the impacts. But the earlier and the closer we can achieve net zero buys us more time to be able to reduce the emissions overall for the planet, and that helps us to reduce the impacts of the temperature rises that may come in the future. And the Climate Change Committee is releasing another report later today, and that's going to sort of reinforce the messages that have been taken around the need for adaptation and resilience. So what are we doing about it? Robert mentioned the FCRM strategy, and it's a fantastic way that's setting out the ambition for the future in terms of a nation ready for and resilient to flooding and coastal change now, today, tomorrow, and out to the year 2100. And it's part of a wider framework of government plans, which includes the 25-year Environment Plan, the Agriculture Bill, and the Environment Bill. And I think Georgina will probably cover those, so I don't want to go into those at all. I think the strategy has, 3 great ambitions, and it is about making sure that we move the nation from the concept of protection alone to resilience and adaptation, and making sure that we have a mixture of approaches and measures to be able to provide that broader protection and mitigation to the communities. We know that the frequency and intensity of flooding is going to occur. We know we're going to get more drought and reduced rainfall at the same time and at different times of the year. So how do we balance those mix of climatic challenges and work together to be able to deliver on those? One part of the action plan that we recently released in May this year is about the future FENS and taking actions to deliver on the ambition. And I'm really excited to hopefully be able to visit this area when things free up from COVID a bit later on this year. And to be able to look at this area that contains around half of the Grade 1 agricultural land. It's a real case study for how we test adaptation in lowland areas, and there's a lot we can learn. We mightn't get it all right, and that's another important element, is that we need to be able to build on the lessons from failing, so failing fast and learning from those lessons as much as succeeding from the things that we try and the things that we innovate. So again, it comes back to adaptation and partnership working being the key. And this Future Fens project is going to look beyond traditional capital investment and bring partners together to tackle that challenge, better assess the risks and trial new approaches to adaptation. And I'm really excited to see what the outcomes of that are. The other element, which many of you would be aware of, is the capital investment program. Over the last 6 years, we were able to successfully deliver 300,000 homes better protected. We delivered that on time and on budget, and the government has now invested a further 5.2 billion to better protect 336,000 properties over the next 6 years. And protection of those properties is going to be key to be able to deliver the FCRM strategy. And part of that, a good example of that is the Islington pumping station in Kings Lynn IDB that is pictured here, and that will be part of our delivery and part of the capital program that we're going forward. And there are many more examples of that we'll be able to achieve. Another key element is asset maintenance. We need to be able to, it's an essential part of what we do, and we know that whether it's maintaining pumping stations, barriers, walls, embankments, clearing obstructions from channels, weed cutting and dredging, we know we need to continue to spend what we can. We know we don't have enough money to do what everyone would like us to do, but we also know it's challenging economic times for the government and for the economy in general as a result of COVID and the pandemic. And so we need to balance those impacts and those requirements with what we need to be able to maintain the funding as well. So around this year, we will aim to spend around 178 million on asset maintenance. That's just from flood and coastal risk management revenue funding. It doesn't include funding from elsewhere, from IDBs and the precepts from IDBs, for example. We recognise it's probably not as much as we can, but we do need to balance that with the economic challenges that I mentioned earlier. And we all know and are living through that. So I don't need to spell that out any further. I think on average, we do spend as much as we can on maintenance, and that allows us to dredge and desilt around 60 to 200 kilometres of river channel each year. And what we do spend, our money is allocated on flood risk, and we need to make sure we invest public money to maintain rivers where it's technically sound, good value for money, and environmentally acceptable. And where we do spend money, it's about making sure that the flood risk benefits are realised from that work. And the rules that we follow are set by government policy and intended to give the best value for the taxpayer. All of this means whether it's asset maintenance or capital program expenditure or resilience and adaptation, we do need to work together, be able to pool our resources and focus on those areas where it's needed most. As risk management authorities, we already do an awful lot together, and we want to see that partnership working, increasing wherever we can to be able to address the challenges that we face at the catchment level and to be able to address the risks of climate change. Managing assets and responding to flood events is not just something for risk management authorities. Everyone needs to play their part, whether it's landowners, homeowners, farmers, communities, and other partner organisations. And we need to continue to work closely with IDBs and local authorities, but also the CLA and NFU to support them and their members. Alongside that, we would encourage landowners to maintain rivers and assets where it's not affordable for the taxpayer to fund the work. And we want to make that easier for landowners to do that by updating our advice on landowner roles and responsibilities, as well as streamlining our permitting processes. So those are all longer term aims and ambitions that we would like to bring into place. At the end of the day, everyone has a part to play, and we are better together. So as the climate changes and as we as a water management sector need to be able to change and increasingly work together to be able to achieve and address the challenges that we have. At EA, we'll continue to seek ways to strengthen local flood management through improving partnership working and collaboration with the many players involved. And we want to be able to do that with yourselves, with the CLA, with the NFU, and with the range of other partners to be able to make sure that we improve our adaptation and resilience to be able to address the climate risk and the flood risk and the drought risk that we have going forward in these times, as well as managing with COVID and everything else that seems to be thrown at us as well. Thank you for listening today.
Thank you, Caroline, for that run through what is a hugely wide subject. I think you'd probably not be surprised that there's a number of questions in the chat about dredging and desilting, and I'll pull those together in that there's, I think, a real concern that dredging is only done by the Environment Agency in response to local campaigns or after there's been a flood event. And I think that there's a real feeling that it is that the EA is not, I know you've talked about sort of 60 to 200 kilometres, but out of such a wide amount of main river, that is really quite a small element. And I think it's something that we certainly feel that working in partnership, a lot more could be done.
Thanks, Robert. I mean, I think it's important to be able to recognise that we need to work out what's the best value for money, for the taxpayers' money. So it's not, you know, we only have a limited amount of funding to be able to spend to be able to address all those areas of adaptation and resilience we need to address those areas of maintenance. We would love to have an endless bucket, and we know money, I think we all would. We know that's not realistic. You know, we have to, government money needs to be spent in the most efficient and effective way possible that will achieve the outcomes, and being able to look at what will achieve the best flood risk benefits, whether that's weed cutting, dredging, improving conveyance, updating maintenance on channel structures, pump stations, etc. We need to look at the blend of what is best, and there is a balance there, because if you spend all the money on one thing, you can't do other things. So it's about how do you balance that budget that you have. And I'm sure we'd all like to spend more money in different areas, and we all have our own preferences, and not everybody's aims can be met, but it's about achieving the optimum balance that we can to reduce the flood risk.
Yeah, I think we all appreciate, Caroline, that there's there isn't a blank check from government, that it is restricted on money, but we do need to work together to make sure that we're being most effective in what's spent. There's also a number of questions about demaining and how that could actually help, because there is a lot of local support for demaining rivers and allowing local boards, IDBs or other structures such as the Somerset Rivers Authority to take over some of the main river function, to make sure that your budget can actually go further on the main rivers that are not demained.
I think it is something we have looked at in the past, and will continue to look at and work with you on. I know from my short time in the role that it's probably not. I'm still learning a lot about it, and it's probably not the easiest process to be able to put in place. It is can be long-winded and complex. So I think that's the sort of thing that we need to look at is how do we do that? What's the most effective and efficient way, and if that's the best solution to aim for making sure we get the best river management, then we can look at we have in the past and will continue to look at those options. But I know it's not always the easiest processes to pursue, but certainly something that we can take on board and continue to look at further as we have done.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a question here about withdrawal of maintenance. That's certainly something that I think lots of landowners are concerned that where maintenance is withdrawn by the EA because it's deemed to be low risk, that farmland is flooded and that farmers can't have get insurance for that. And the questioner says this offends natural justice. What can we do about it?
I think the challenge with that is that, you know, as I said previously, that, you know, we don't have a finite amount of money to work with, and so we do have to limit or focus on those areas that are at the highest risk and, you know, have the highest impact in terms of our maintenance expenditure. And so that's what we try to do. Where we do withdraw, we, you know, make sure that we try and consult, and it's always a difficult decision. I think alongside that, what we are looking to do and trying to work with the Association of Insurers is to look at how we can improve the insurance options in those particular situations, and what are the other mechanisms we can bring in that may help to reduce the impacts in other ways. So, you know, it is about getting the most bang for your buck, so to speak, and we can't do everywhere, as I've said. So it is, you know, unfortunately, we do have to withdraw in some of those lower risk areas, but we are trying to work hard to look at other options as well.
Okay, and I think the last question we'll be able to take in this section is, to what degree has environmental legislation prevented maintenance and therefore been a key trigger for flooding?
I don't, well, I'd have to say that I don't think environmental legislation has prevented maintenance in the same way. I think it is in that way. I think what we need to do is we have a responsibility to look after the environment in the same way that we look after and prevent flood risk. So what we need to be able to do is to balance the requirements there. We need to make sure that we leave the environment in as good or a better state for the future generations. And I'm sure most people would want to have that. What we're facing is a climate and ecological emergency in many ways. And so what we need to be able to do is focus on where we can maintain and preserve those elements. And it's about what we can do that has and brings the multiple benefits for both conservation and flood risk, and that's what we try and balance all the time.
Thank you, Caroline, for the answers to questions and being really open and honest about that. And thank you for your presentation. I know this is a start of a conversation that we will be having with you, and we look forward to working with you closely to really make the best of the finance that we've got. That is something that we really want to at ADA. We want to make sure that working in partnership always achieves better results. Thank you very much, Caroline.
Thank you, Robert.